for the leadership he displays every day in many of the campaigns we will discuss here. We have a delegation here. We're honored that have joined us, led by Captain Ruiz and Captain Marquez, who represent the great men and women of the Mexican Navy. We are honored to be partners with SAMAR every day on the ocean. You will hear from Captain Ruiz soon. Special thanks to Dr. Barbara Taylor for leading the 2024 Vaquita survey, which we will be discussing in detail later on. Everyone who cares about marine wildlife is in her debt, and we remain fortunate to have her expertise to bear in these larger efforts. And thank you to our event sponsor, including DJI, whose world-class drones are absolutely mission critical in each of our campaigns and frankly have been transformative for our oceans work. You will hear about this more this morning. So why a oceans briefing now? Because scientific consensus tells us that we are already in a decisive decade for the survival of the oceans. And while much of global conservation around the oceans focuses on 2030 or 2050, Sea Shepherd's sights are not looking out at some distant horizon. We are engaged now on the oceans, every day on Sea Shepherd vessels. The urgency of this moment is clear and compelling. Our captains and our crews stand between poachers and the marine life they would kill and drive to the edge of extinction. And that defense defines who we are and who we have been for 45 years. For us, there's absolutely not a moment to lose. There's no time to waste. 2030 is now, today. It is tomorrow, and it is every day, and we are there every day on the water. We must protect what we have now versus just adding marine protection zones that exist on paper more than the ocean itself. We need to have real protection every day now. For Sea Shepherd, we are the P in marine protected areas. We focus on protection. That has always been our mission and will remain our mission. In this 2024 State of the Oceans briefing, you will hear how our ships protect the bright line between survival and extinction, which is an extraordinarily horrible concept. For whales, extinction is possible. For dolphins, and particularly for the Vaquita porpoise. There are so many animals today that are being pushed to the edge, to the brink by humankind's voraciousness and particularly by illegal fishing. Our entirely donation-driven work is on the ground in the Faroe Islands, out in the oceans north of Scotland, where we are leading and contributing to a campaign and a global coalition to end the barbaric slaughter of pilot whales and white-sided dolphins. This slaughter is known as the Grind. Just days ago, on June 11th, there was a particularly brutal slaughter of pilot whales, and we are now pursuing charges against local authorities as a result of their callous and blatant violations of their own very limited animal protection laws. Our Stop the Grind campaign is important work and is getting real traction in ending this barbaric tradition once and for all. You will hear all about this from our Stop the Grind campaign leader and Sea Shepherd senior staff, Valentina Cross, later this morning. Many of you have probably seen recent coverage of our work in the Upper Gulf of California, where the crew of the MV Seahorse partners with the government of Mexico and works every day with SAMAR, the Mexican Navy, to push back on the poachers and the cartels who are there. We work every day in defense of the most endangered marine mammal on the planet Earth, the Vaquita porpoise. Starting in January, Sea Shepherd and the Mexican government expanded our area of operations to protect the vaquita by more than 50%. The agreement also expanded Operation Milagro, which is what we call our operation where we have been there for almost 10 years, to provide protection for the threatened totoaba fish across the entire vaquita refuge. Within Operation Milagro in the Upper Gulf of California, we have begun the first steps of a new program to help release ensnared sea lions in the Gulf of California, where they get caught in discarded or fishing gear and even active fishing gear and are often injured or die as a result. The 2024 Vaquita survey was just completed, and its leader, Dr. Taylor, will share a detailed briefing with you all in a few moments. Looking to the distant part of the globe, we began in 2024 a partnership with our friends at Sea Shepherd Global to work in Antarctica, bringing the world's attention to the industrial devastation that is depleting the krill stock, which is the critical food for the entire web of life in the Antarctica, and particularly to whales' health and future fortunes. Our next step is to get large swaths of the area around Antarctica declared as a marine protected areas. Then we must mobilize countries and ships to put real protection into the word protected there. Further devastation of the krill supply will significantly impact the ability of humpback and fin whales to recover from the past atrocities of commercial whaling in the Southern Ocean. And we are committed and have been for 45 years to their survival. Two of our longest running whale campaigns are conducted in Mexico and continue to guide protection efforts of their habitat. Operation Guadalupe, which started in 2016, is based on Guadalupe Island. We study Cuvier's beaked whales. The iconic ship, the MV Martin Sheen, has led these campaigns for almost 10 years. And this campaign is essential for protecting the biosphere reserve, its inhabitants, and the population there of beaked whales. The Martin Sheen also leads and has for years the Sea Shepherd campaign in the Revillagigedo archipelago, which develops data to drive protective measures for the humpback whale population in an ecosystem that was declared a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 2016. In Revillagigedo, we study and protect this population of calving and breeding humpback whales and provide greater insights into their migration along the Mexican coast. Last, this morning, we will discuss one brand new campaign, which with much of the news being shared for the first time ever. We are the very earliest stages of a new campaign in the Gulf of Mexico, in one of the largest reefs in the Western Hemisphere, which is also a critical spawning ground for grouper, which is the Alacranes Reef, just off of the Yucatan Peninsula in the Gulf of Mexico. So this is a bit of a packed morning. We have a lot to cover, and here is what I would like to leave you with. Every day, Sea Shepherd's crews galvanize activism, determination, technology, and collaboration in a deep esprit de corps into a unique, data-driven strategy to implement policies and actions to protect marine wildlife on the water, where marine wildlife is. Sea Shepherd proves every day that we human beings working together can push back against the decades and in some cases centuries of environmental devastation in our oceans. Hope is what inspires us. We are optimistic, grassroots movement of people who care about animal welfare and marine conservation. It is our impact that proves each of us has the capacity to protect the most vulnerable species on Earth. Each and every one of us can do this. For us at Sea Shepherd, our gratitude for what has been accomplished yesterday is only surpassed by our enthusiasm for what we can do tomorrow and our hope. It is an honor for me to be part of this 2024 State of the Oceans briefing, along with Ambassador Moctezuma, all of our partners and guests here online, and with the tens of thousands of Sea Shepherd supporters who make all of our work possible. Thank you again for joining us, and please give a warm welcome to the Honorable Esteban Moctezuma, Ambassador of Mexico to the United States.
Thank you very much, Pritam, and thanks to everybody in the Sea Shepherd organization. As you say, there's hope, and I think that you are a messenger of hope. We really appreciate your commitment and all the efforts you do in order to have a shared mission with all of us, which is to protect together the Vaquita marina, which is the world's most endangered marine mammal. Despite facing numerous challenges, our commitment to safeguard this species remains steadfast, and commitment is only growing. The protection and conservation of these species represent an unwavering commitment from the Mexican state, enduring for many years to come. Mexico consistently relies on scientific facts, innovative technologies, and data when addressing the current situation of the Vaquita and the Totoaba. That is why we are encouraged by the factual confirmation of the existence of at least 8 Vaquitas thanks to newly deployed DNA identification technology. Along with Barbara Taylor, and we thank her for all her efforts, we agree that we must continue to search and determine where the Vaquitas are and how they are faring. I want to recognize the Mexican Navy, because the Mexican Navy support and collaboration has been indispensable in maintaining a strong regional presence, deterring illegal activities, and ensuring the survival of these remaining Vaquitas. The collaborative efforts of Sea Shepherd, Mexican and US authorities, along with various civil society organizations, exemplify the true essence of teamwork and demonstrate that even in the face of daunting challenges, a united approach can lead to substantial progress. We knew from the start of this partnership 8 years ago that the road ahead was long and challenging. Nonetheless, our mission to save the Vaquita is far from complete. We are committed to redoubling our efforts, deploying new technologies, and extending our surveys to ensure this precious species is protected from extinction. Together, with unwavering resolve, we will continue to fight for the survival of the Vaquita, the Totoaba, and ultimately, the health and safety of our oceans. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Pritam, and thank you, Ambassador, for your kind words. My name is Julián Escutia. I'm the Mexico Country Director, and I'm very pleased to be here today in this 2024 State of the Ocean briefing. Muy buenos días a todas y a todos. Mi nombre es Julián Escutia, soy el director para México de Sea Shepherd. Y para las personas que nos están viendo en línea, les comento y recuerdo que hay una opción en su pantalla que dice Interpretation. So what I'm saying is that there's simultaneous interpretation for our friends and guests that are watching this online and that are Spanish speaking. For us, it's really important to grow our base in Mexico and Latin America. So that's why we are very inclusive, of course. We received a number of questions from our guests online. So I have a selection of them. The first one would go to Pritam. Please, Pritam, can you bring us back to the early years in the upper Gulf of California and walk us through the evolution of Operación Milagro and Sea Shepherd's efforts to protect the vaquita?
Hello? You hear? Okay, okay, great. We've been in I think 10 years now, and in the Upper Gulf. And in the beginning, we were there first and foremost to gather information, because it's really important, when you have a health issue, whether it's in the oceans with a species or in a human being. First, you have to understand what the problem is, and you have to figure out what the solutions are. So in the first years, that was our approach. Then we realized very quickly that the issue there was simply, there was nets in the water which were engaging the vaquita. So we then worked out a program with the Mexican government to pull the nets. We eventually realized that was beyond our capacity, and we changed our approach in partnership with the Mexican government, particularly SAMAR, the Mexican Navy. And now, in the last 3 seasons, we have worked with the Mexican Navy on an increasingly closer and closer basis. And we share intelligence. We identify what is going on in the Gulf. We share the information in a partnership with the Mexican Navy, who has personnel who come aboard our boats to observe and gather that information. And the Mexican Navy does the intervention. And this has resulted in the ZTA being effectively net-free. And we also assist in whatever technology or scientific resources we can. So we assist the scientific community, Dr. Taylor and her team, in providing resources, ships and funding and technology, big eyes, etc., to be able to find out the information. And so we're there first and foremost in a support, intelligence gathering, and science role. Our campaign is led by science, what is actually taking place, rather than speculation. And that's really the basis of all of our campaigns at this point.
Thanks very much, Pritam. Ambassador Moctezuma, what do you find to be the most encouraging elements of the partnership between the Mexican government and Sea Shepherd?
Well, I think that having this collaboration is vital, because it's very different when the approach is finger pointing than when it is collaboration and when we are focused on a specific goal, which is to save the vaquita. And what the team has done is to gather a very important strength, which is to put together the scientific community, technology, and being innovative in these senses. I think that what the Navy did, which was to throw these hooks into the water in order to catch the nets, is very innovative. And it's a part of the solution. The DNA identification technology, it's very, very important. And that has helped a lot to really strengthen the program. The commitment of Sea Shepherd to be the problem is, and to be knowledgeable about what's happening there. Because many of the interpretations of what was going on in the area were made by people very far away from there, and with a technology that was not as precise and accurate as the one we have now. So bringing together the political role, the Navy, Sea Shepherd, Barbara Taylor, technology, innovative solutions, is, I believe, the product of this collaboration between the Mexican government and the Sea Shepherd organization. And we're very encouraged by the result of this effort and very committed to double down.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Pritam, the collaboration between Sea Shepherd and Mexico to protect the vaquita has changed dramatically in just the last 2 or 3 years. In your analysis, what factors led to these changes?
Well, I think they were all driven by the data that we saw of what was taking place on the water. Everything we do is focused on what's really happening there. What's the real threat every day to those animals, and what's the real solution to those threats? And by then going and talking through that with Ambassador Moctezuma, with the representatives of Samoa, and particularly with Admiral Ojeda, we were able to identify real specific solutions to the problems. So, for instance, the Navy came up with this innovative idea, which, by the way, in the beginning, a lot of people thought was quite nutty, of putting down these concrete blocks with these hooks. That was very innovative. We came up with the idea of how about if we've got a vessel that could stay on the water for months, 6, 8, 9 months at a time. Well, it had to be a very special vessel because it had to have huge oil fuel tanks. It had to be able to stay in very difficult weather. And so actually that was a conversation between Ambassador Moctezuma, myself, and then we reached out to the Admiral and discussed it and said, what if we effectively put a floating lighthouse, a floating citadel in the middle of the Vaquita Refuge? Because the problem was we had to chase and go back and forth and we were gone. It was actually Barbara Taylor who pointed out to me how much time we were away, which actually was the impetus for me to say, we got to fix this problem. So, and then I went to Ambassador Moctezuma, we went to Admiral Ojeda, and we came up with a solution. And then we've continued to come up with solutions. Drones, for instance, really expanding our drone gives us a lot more information about the vaquita, but also any boat who comes in an area, we know who they are, what they are. We give it to Samoa, they're on it, they've got the data, they've got the facts, etc. So it's a complete back and forth innovation, solution solving. Each time we have a problem, we go to them. They have a problem, they come to us. And together we come up with a solution with one goal. We have to be there. We have to protect the vaquita. It's not negotiable.
Thanks, Pritam. Ambassador Moctezuma, challenges ranging from species to environment and climate touch all countries. So what do you think other countries can learn from the collaborative model you have helped to build between Sea Shepherd and Mexico?
I think this is a very important way that it can help a lot to understand how different countries, different organizations, and peoples can really coordinate in order to create a teamwork. I think that we're facing very important challenges that are growing in size and in danger related to the climate change and related to nature. And we have to learn fast. We have to learn how to gather together in order to tackle those challenges first. And what those challenges tells us to learn. And we have to learn how to change in order to preserve our world and our natural species. So we're learning together how to work together, how to make a teamwork be effective. And I think that's a very, very important issue to really be in the place of where things can be solved. There's always these bureaucratic trends to try to fix everything in reports and in paper, while what we're learning is that things have to be fixed in the field and where things are happening. So this helps us to be focused And I believe that teamwork and focusing in the real challenge and the real issue is what will help us to create a model that could be helpful for the rest of the countries.
Well, our time is up for this panel. Thank you very much, Ambassador Moctezuma, for being here. Thank you, Pritam, for your welcoming remarks. And now I will transition to the presentation of Dr. Barbara Taylor about the 2024 Vaquita survey. Thank you very much.
Good morning. It's my pleasure to present to you the 2024 Vaquita survey. And I'd like to start by thanking our collaborators, CONAM, which is the National Park Service of Mexico, and Sea Shepherd Conservation Society funded this work and supported it in very many ways, which I'll talk about. I also wanted to acknowledge my main collaborator. This was a visual survey and an acoustic survey. And so Dr. Gustavo Hinojosa was one of the main parts of this survey, and we thank him and his team very much. So if I could have the slides back again. Went away. There we go. Sure, quite where I'm supposed to point this. There we go. So let me begin by orienting you to this very special place where vaquitas live. So the Gulf of California is that long body of water, and the little yellow piece at the very top is the distribution of vaquitas. And vaquitas have lived there for 3 million years. They're the ultimate Mexicans. They have been separated from their nearest relative in South America for that long. And we used genomics to tell us that they have been naturally rare, probably in the low thousands, for over 200,000 years. And that results in their having relatively low genetic diversity, but also being less vulnerable to problems that species run into when they get to very low numbers, like inbreeding depression. So they actually have some sort of strange advantages for being a naturally rare species. Let me tell you a little bit about the biology of this really special animal. It is the only desert porpoise. There are 7 species of porpoises, and most of them live in cold, productive waters. But there's this unusual situation in the Gulf of California where the nutrients that come up from the muddy bottom that was deposited by the Colorado River make it a very productive area. And so these porpoises live there and use their special echolocation abilities to be able to feed on small fishes. Vaquitas are about my size, just a little over 5 feet, a little over 100 pounds. And they evidently can have calves every year, but only 1 calf a year. So this calf that you see here is about the size of the calves that we would see in May, about 3 months old. We obtained this drone footage last year, and you can see a little calf that is just sort of learning how to swim. And you can also see why it is so difficult for us to study vaquitas. They're very small, they're very hard to see. They're usually just in pairs. And so it takes some very special abilities to be able to find these animals and learn about their lives. The first survey of the entire vaquita distribution was in 1997. I personally saw 80 vaquitas in a single hour in that survey, which of course will not happen in many decades if we continue to work very hard. But our second survey in 2008, we'd already lost over half of the vaquitas. And there's only a single threat for vaquitas, and that's that they get entangled in gill nets and die. And that particular decrease of loss of 300 vaquitas was the result of shrimp gill nets and gill nets for finfish, not gill nets for totoaba. But totoaba were early a part of their history, and now, of course, are a very important part of their history. Totoaba, the large fish that you see there, is also a species that's only found in the Gulf of California. And it is valued for its swim bladder, primarily in China. And throughout most of my career, there were not very many totoabas. In fact, totoabas and vaquitas went on to the Mexican version of the Endangered Species Act in the mid-1980s. And they were the first marine fish that was protected under CITES, the Convention for the International Trade in Endangered Species. But they were recovering, and we were hearing from fishermen when we did that survey in 2008 that the totoabas were coming back. So we started actually hearing more and more about the recovery of totoaba, and of course, they were still valued for their swim bladders, but now China had a lot more money. So they developed very rapidly a black market for totoaba swim bladders. And they're so valuable that per kilo, they're more valuable than gold or cocaine. And often they're called the cocaine of the sea. And the nets were particularly lethal this time because there were new technologies. The net that you see there was held down to the bottom with that giant sea anchor. And the poachers were able to put the nets out and let them sit on the bottom basically throughout the entire spawning season when these big fish come up to the northern Gulf. And that's from about December to about April. And that's a lot of net in the water for a long time. And that's what was driving vaquitas rapidly towards extinction. And as Preetam was just saying, that was the period when the Sea Shepherd showed up and together working with the Navy, even then, managed to pull out over 1,000 of these nets. And I've often asked myself the question, would we even be talking about vaquita? Would there be vaquita here today if they had not done that? So what you're seeing here are those little symbols are the vaquita refuge. And each one of those dots is a passive acoustic detector. And we developed a way of monitoring what was happening to the numbers of vaquitas using their echolocation clicks. So we were able to put out those detectors for 2 months every year and gather about 3,000 days of data a year. The darker purple the dot is, the more vaquita clicks were detected. And so you can see that the dark purple is steadily going away. And in fact, that period from 2014 to 2016, they were declining at about 35% per year. We did another survey in 2015 and found that there were only about 60 vaquitas left. And using the acoustic data, we knew that basically half of those were gone by 2016. So the vaquita recovery team that had been in existence advising the government of Mexico about vaquitas since 1997 decided that in this really emergency situation that we should try to take some vaquitas into sea pens locally where they could be protected from the totoaba gill nets until that problem could be sorted out. So in 2017, we went out to try to capture vaquitas. And it was the methods that we developed during this effort that are the same methods that we used in the 2023 and 2024 surveys that I'll tell you about. So there you can see the acoustic detectors that are used. And what we did that was different, instead of leaving them out for a month, we left them out for a day. And the fishermen would go out in the middle of the night. They would pick up the acoustic detectors, take them back to Armando Jaramillo. He would analyze the data, and about 4 a.m, I would get a WhatsApp telling me where the vaquitas were and where we should go look for the vaquitas. Then how do we look for vaquitas? Well, vaquitas, it turns out, are very shy animals. They tend to avoid vessel noise. And so we have to use these 25 power binoculars, which we call big eyes, and some very calm weather conditions to be able to find the vaquitas. We're able to also get sort of the angle and how far they are down from the horizon so that we can put those data into the computer and actually plot where the vaquitas are in a map and be able to track the animals and then guide in this case, guide in the team that was trying to capture vaquitas. We captured 2 vaquitas. The first one up on the upper left is calf that's about 6 months old. The calf, she never settled down, and the veterinarians determined that the best course of action was to release her back into the waters where we'd been monitoring where the mother was. The animal in the lower right was the second vaquita that was captured, adult female, not pregnant, not lactating. She seemed like the perfect candidate. She seemed to be doing very well. They took her to the sea pen, and unfortunately, she dropped to the bottom and unfortunately died of what's called capture myopathy, basically having a heart attack from stress. And the veterinarians determined that, you know, they knew too little about how to care for these animals, and all the efforts to save vaquitas through taking them into captivity were abandoned. And vaquitas continued to decline. So in 2018, you can see the only sort of light purple dots are in one corner of the vaquita refuge. And the vaquita recovery team advised the government of Mexico that they should focus all of their enforcement efforts where these last survivors were. And that was called the Zero Tolerance Area. It receives special protections from the government of Mexico. And you'll hear quite a bit about it later, but I'll be calling it the ZTA. At the same time, the government of Mexico had been paying fishermen not to fish, and those payments ceased in 2018, and a lot of fishing resumed. And along with that came a loss of our acoustic detectors, which were probably being taken by fishermen. And so after 2018, we were no longer able to do acoustic monitoring. So that area, the big area, has not been monitored since 2018. But we continued to do research to see what the status of vaquitas were inside the ZTA. We did efforts in 2018, 2019, and 2021 in the fall period when we'd always done our research in the past. But that's also the period of the peak of shrimp gill netting season. So we were seeing a lot of gill nets, actually hindering our ability to study the vaquitas. In fact, on the last day in 2021, we mapped out 117 pongas inside the ZTA, all with at least 1,000 meters of net, meaning that there was enough gill net in the water in the protected area to run the length of the protected area 5 times over. So that was pretty discouraging. I also want to introduce you to Anna, that individual that you see at the bottom. The picture in 2017 was taken when that calf was captured. That was her calf. And the very next year, we saw her with a new calf. So she was the first vaquita that we knew that they could have a calf 2 years in a row. We haven't seen her since 2018. And because of this major issue with gill nets inside the ZTA, as you already heard, the Mexican Navy put 193 of these concrete blocks there, a meter by a meter by a meter piece of concrete with about a 3-meter high piece of rebar sticking out of the top with a hook. And these were meant to deter gill netters who don't want to lose their nets from putting their nets into the vaquita protected area. And I can't say enough how important this is to have, for the first time, a real sanctuary for vaquitas. So let me talk now about the 2023 and 2024 efforts. It kept getting windier and windier in the fall. So we decided to move the survey to May to get calmer winds so that we had more time to get good looks and photographs of vaquitas. And we used this strategy. We used the Seahorse, which is a tremendous survey platform, and it can have 4 pairs of these big eyes on it, which gives us more eyes and more chances of finding vaquitas. And yet it's a big ship, and so it puts a fair amount of noise into the water. And so typically we'll see vaquitas between 1 mile and 2 miles away from the ship with those big binoculars. And we can then track the vaquitas and guide in a smaller, quieter boat to be able to take the photographs. So that's the Sirena de la Noche that you see at the top there. And this is an idea of what it looks like on the Sirena de la Noche during an actual sighting. The observers are up there with cameras and binoculars and data forms. And then you'll see coming in from the left, a little fishing boat, a panga. That was one of the new additions this year of doing eDNA work. And so we were able to guide in both the Sirena de la Noche and the little panga to be able to get both photographs of the animals and hopefully get eDNA from the water samples. This is our 2023 effort. The lines in blue are the track lines of the Seahorse, and those in red are track lines of the Sirena. The zero tolerance area is the dashed gray lines, and you can see the points where we located vaquitas as little dots. The green dots are the ones that had a calf with them. And you can see that quite a few of the dots are actually outside of the zero tolerance area. So as a result of our research last year, the government of Mexico stepped right up and said they needed to extend the area of protection. So there's an extension area, and they have since placed hundreds of blocks within the extension area and more inside of the zero tolerance area. And the other exciting thing that we observed in that survey was almost no fishing effort inside the zero tolerance area. But in 2023, there was quite a lot of gill netting that was just right outside the boundary. And so it was really impressive to see how nimble the change in management was after finding vaquitas outside the zero tolerance area. The Sea Shepherd has also been monitoring those blocks to see whether nets were getting entangled that could ensnare vaquitas. The red line that you see is when the side scan sonar is on, and you can see they've covered the protected area very thoroughly. And since January 2023, they've found 7 nets in that area that were entangled nets. Of course, that doesn't count the number of instances that the gill netters were reported and the Navy responded and got them out of the area. These are actually ones that were in entangled nets. So this is our visual team on the top. Most of those people have been out there working with me since 1997. We live on land and take pongas out in the dark so that we can be all set up on the ship and ready to start our surveys before the sun comes up. And again, we're guided by where the acousticians have been finding or detecting vaquitas. As I mentioned, we have to have very calm weather to be able to find vaquitas. This is our effort in 2023 and 2024. Basically, you should be looking at the 0, 1, and 2. It has to be almost completely calm to find vaquitas. And we had many hundreds of kilometers of search effort in both years. In 2024, we expanded the area a little bit, and we also increased the time. We expanded the area to the area actually where we had seen mothers and calves in 2017 and hadn't looked at that area since. But we kept the effort the same inside the ZTA so that we could compare the 2 years. And let me orient you to this a little bit before I get into the details. So in yellow there, you see the ZTA, in red, the extension area, and I'm going to take those off and then go through everything in detail here. So again, the Sirena is in blue, the Seahorse is in red. The green dots are actually the passive acoustic detectors that detected vaquitas. And you can see that we concentrated our effort in those areas where they were hearing vaquitas. The purple dots, they're sort of magenta dots on this depiction, are the 9 sightings that we had this year of vaquitas. And about half of those were outside the ZTA. They were in this extension area. And we still saw some gill netting in that area. And so it's really important that both the ZTA and the EA receive the same level of protection since the animals are spending quite a bit of their time outside of the ZTA. The other important thing to know about the May season is that it's the fishing season for a fish called sierra, which is a mackerel. And the type of gill net that's used to catch this fish actually is a surface gill net, hangs from the surface, unlike the shrimp gill nets and the Totoaba gill nets, which are bottom set gill nets, and of course are very vulnerable to the hooks. So the Sierra gill nets are very dangerous to vaquitas, and they are less vulnerable to hooks, if at all. So they also require some increased vigilance. So here are our results. Let me talk you first about how we get there. So for each one of those sightings, the observers write down every single detail that they can about what they saw. And we have photographs and we have drone footage for about half of those sightings. And we compile these into what's called an evidence dossier. And then at the end of 3 weeks, we have to try to make sense of how many vaquitas did we see in that area over the whole 3 weeks. And to do that, we use a process called expert elicitation. And the day after the survey is finished, we have a Zoom with the people who facilitate this expert elicitation that are in England and Finland. And they lead us through all of our individual probability distributions to come up with a joint probability distribution. And that's what you see here. So we address 2 questions. The first is, what is the number of unique calves that were seen within the study area? And in this case, we said that there were in 2023, it was likely that there were 1 to 2 calves. And this year, it was most likely, very likely that we saw 0 calves. However, we had an individual that, had we not had the drone footage, might have been counted as a calf. It was a smaller individual. We all recognize it as a smaller individual. It was following along a larger individual. But when we got the drone footage and were able to measure this vaquita and then compare it to the growth curves of vaquitas from life history data, we were able to find out that this calf had just celebrated its first birthday. It was just over a year old. It was probably born in March of 2023. And so for this youngster, the ZTA had been really a lifesaver. The second question we address is what is the total number of unique vaquitas seen, including calves, in the study area? And we had a 76% chance that there were between 8 and 13 in 2023, and a 75% chance that there were between 6 and 8 in 2024. We had some other interesting observations. So the last group that we saw was a group of 4, including this individual with a very distinctive dorsal fin that we saw in 2018 and 2019, but we didn't see it in 2021 or 2023. And so we had to ask, where has this individual been? Were we missing it, or was it living outside the ZTA? And that goes along with a number of other individuals that we identified in 2018 and 2019 that had nicks in their dorsal fin. These nicks are almost certainly caused by being entangled in a gill net and getting out. And so these individuals, you had to ask yourself, were they just a random 2% of vaquitas that survived? And 98% of their brothers and sisters died in nets? Or were these animals especially careful around nets because they'd experienced the danger personally? And so it makes them very important to the recovery of the species, especially that mother that you see at the top, because every adult female, when you get down to 20 or 10 or 20 individuals, is an extremely important individual. So I want to emphasize that despite seeing fewer vaquitas within the ZTA, we cannot conclude that the vaquita numbers have declined, because vaquitas could move back to other good habitat. So what you're seeing in this diagram is from our 2015 survey. Again, the darker purple dots are places where more vaquita clicks were detected. The little red triangles are where our sightings are. And the green square is where the ZTA and EA is. And you can see that a lot of the very best vaquita habitat is not within the ZTA and may be where our missing vaquitas have gone to. It's important to note that the zero tolerance area is only 12% of the vaquita distribution in 2015. The other research that we did this May was we wanted to solve this problem of acoustic detectors being stolen. So we used these pop-up devices, that little yellow disc that you see there. You can program the time that it's going to pop to the surface. So it allows you to put the acoustic monitor down into the water and have nothing at the surface at all. No marking that someone might vandalize or steal. And then you can go out at a specific time and pick up the acoustic detector. And so we were able to do that very successfully. And so the research that's already planned for this summer, for July and August, is to take, where we have on their way 30 new acoustic devices that we're going to be able to deploy in the areas, the habitat that vaquitas favored most in 2015 and previously. And we'll be able to put those down with these pop-up devices so that we don't lose them. And hopefully we'll have, by September, 2,000 days of data that will better allow us to interpret the 2024 survey. And the time is really precious right now, because these pictures that you see of Tonga's absolutely loaded with gillnet. I took this May while we were out on the survey. And the vaquitas that are outside that sanctuary of the ZTA are unprotected. The gill netting remains the primary gear of all the local fishers. And we have to ask the questions, are our missing vaquita already casualties of gill netting? Or do we have vaquitas that are feeding in these unprotected waters? And so we have to adapt our management accordingly to be able to save these last survivors. I also wanted to emphasize we had a very successful community training project, both in 2023 and in 2024, where young people from San Felipe, the local community, came out and were trained to be visual observers on both of our ships. And it was very successful, not only the training aspect, but because they got to see vaquitas alive. Most of them got to see vaquitas alive, and they were thrilled, and they'll take that back to their parents and their families. And I'd like to leave you with this beautiful drone footage, probably the best footage that's ever been taken of vaquitas. You can see they're nice, healthy, fat porpoises. And I really want to emphasize that I have complete faith in the animals. If we can stop them from dying in gill nets, I think that they can recover, like many species have from these low numbers. And I hope that we can all continue to work to save vaquitas for Mexico and for the world. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Dr. Taylor, for your hard work for many years and your commitment to the vaquita. So up next, it's my honor to introduce Captain Carlos Ruiz. He's Director de Inspección y Vigilancia de la Secretaría de Marina, Director for Inspections and Monitoring of the Ministry of the Navy. So please join me in welcoming Captain Carlos Ruiz. Hola, hola, hola. Hear me? Okay, so this is going to be with consecutive translation.
Bueno. Buenos días a todos. Primeramente reciban un saludo del almirante José Rafael Ojeda Durán, secretario de Marina, y un saludo también de todos los hombres y todas las mujeres que pertenecemos a la Secretaría de Marina.
First of all, greetings from Secretary Admiral Rafael Ojeda, and greetings from the women and men that serve in the Mexican Navy.
El día de hoy trataré de describir un poco el trabajo que la Secretaría de Marina hace en el Alto Golfo de California.
Today, I'm going to briefly describe the work that the Secretary of Navy of Mexico does in their work.
Bien. Primeramente trataré de ser breve con los antecedentes. Creo que ya la doctora Bárbara Taylor lo explicó muy ampliamente.
I'll be brief with the background information as Dr. Barbara Taylor already shared details.
Solo quiero especificar también que en México, al igual que las CITES y al igual que otros organismos, México considera la vaquita marina una especie en peligro de extinción.
Mexico, as well as CITES and other international organizations, do consider the vaquita as a species in danger of extinction.
Y por lo tanto, la Secretaría de Marina, en coordinación con otras dependencias mexicanas, se ha encargado desde hace muchos años de tratar de preservarla, vigilando y cuidando el área.
Therefore, the Mexican Navy, along with other Mexican agencies, do take care of the vaquita with inspection, monitoring, and taking law enforcement actions.
Desde 1940, la vaquita marina se estima que existía una cantidad de 5,000 individuos. No hay algo que nos los pueda asegurar. Sin embargo, podemos ver ahí que a partir de 1997 es cuando se hace la primera estimación formal y nos arroja 567 individuos.
So we know that since, we know that in 1940, there were around 5,000 vaquitas. That is not a confirmed figure. But in 1997, there was a formal estimation and the number and the number was 567.
A partir de ese año se han hecho estudios y se han determinado con los métodos que nos ha explicado la doctora Bárbara Taylor la cantidad posible de individuos que aún existen y ahí como lo pueden ver cada año.
Since 1997, research has been and surveys have been conducted in a regular basis.
Las acciones del gobierno mexicano más sobresalientes empiezan en el año 2005, cuando se establece el área de refugio de la vaquita marina.
More consistent actions have been taking place since 2005 when the Vaquita Refuge area was formally established.
Y durante 10 años hicieron diversos trabajos y el 2015 se materializa una estrategia para la recuperación de la vaquita marina y la protección de la totoaba.
Those efforts consolidated in a strategy to save the vaquita in 2015 with a new strategy.
Ahí se describen las acciones que hace el gobierno de México, como ya las platicó la doctora Bárbara Taylor, que tiene mucha experiencia en esto.
And in that strategy, there were a series of actions by the government of Mexico and other allies that were previously described by Dr. Barbara Taylor, who is an expert.
En el año 2016, la CITES invita a los 183 países que son parte a firmar un documento donde se acuerda el apoyo para que pueda conservarse la vaquita marina.
In 2016, the CITES secretary asked the 183 countries that are party of this treaty to sign a document in order to call for saving vaquita.
En el año 2017, como lo describió la doctora Bárbara Taylor, bueno, aquí no voy a tener mucho. Efectivamente, se logra obtener a una cría y a una adulta. Y bueno, no se pudieron adaptar a vivir en cautiverio. Y este método se tuvo que eliminar.
In 2017, as Dr. Taylor shared before, 2 individuals were held in captivity to explore if they were able to survive, and they didn't, so that strategy stopped right there.
El sector pesquero en el Alto Golfo de California, entre otras cosas, utiliza las redes de enmalle, que son artes de pesca que se consideran un peligro para la vaquita marina.
Fishers in the Upper Gulf of California use gill nets, which are considered as dangerous for the vaquita.
Y desgraciadamente, como consecuencia de la caída tan brusca que tiene de 567 individuos a llegar a casi 8 en los estudios que se habían hecho, se determina por parte del gobierno de Estados Unidos y con fundamento en la Ley de Protección de Mamíferos Marinos un embargo a esa área.
And therefore, in 2020, the U.S. government determined an embargo on the fisheries of that region due to the use of gill nets that are, as he said, dangerous and for the vaquita survival.
Sea Shepherd tiene 10 años en esta operación, la Operación Milagro. Secretaría de Marina teníamos mucho más años, sin embargo, en una coordinación muy estrecha con Sea Shepherd, empezamos a trabajar en algo más ambicioso, más sólido, pero que sabíamos que íbamos a poder tener un mejor resultado.
10 years ago with Operation Milagro, Operation Miracle, the work with Sea Shepherd has really consolidated these efforts and given it a solid basis for the fight for the survival of vaquita.
Posterior a la designación de la zona de tolerancia cero, y en el año 2022, para ser exactos, la Secretaría de Marina propone sembrar bloques para, con unos ganchos para inhibir el uso de redes por parte de los pescadores, específicamente en la zona de tolerancia cero.
In 2022, the Mexican Navy proposed a new strategy to put concrete blocks at the bottom of the ocean with steel hooks in order to prevent gill netting and also to catch eventually these gill nets.
Después del crucero de avistamiento del año 2023 y como una recomendación de la comunidad científica y considerando que los bloques se habían convertido en un buen método para inhibir el uso de redes en esa área y por lo tanto que podría convertirse en el área donde la vaquita marina podía vivir de una manera más tranquila, inmediatamente la Secretaría de Marina, atendiendo esa recomendación, coordinó con las demás dependencias y se inició y se concluyó con una ampliación a lo que hoy le llaman la zona de aprovechamiento limitado.
So after the 2023 Vaquita survey and in light of the results of that survey, it was shown that the placement of these blocks was a good strategy. So that's why, and it showed that Vaquita were at ease in that area, given the results of the survey. So they decided to expand that effort to what is now called the ECTA, the extension of the zero tolerance zone.
El sembrar los bloques es un trabajo muy cuidadoso desde su fabricación hasta el sembrado y poco a poco, si ustedes se dan cuenta, es un trabajo que lo pueden ver en el video, es un trabajo muy específico, muy cuidadoso y que requiere de muchas horas hombre, de mucho desgaste de material y personal.
As you can see in the video, the placement of these blocks in the bottom of the ocean is hard work. It takes long hours and a lot of care as well.
Es un trabajo, este video multiplíquenlo por 216 y es el trabajo de muchos hombres y muchas mujeres de la Secretaría de Marina que les llevó aproximadamente 2 meses en la primera fase y 2 meses en la segunda fase.
So for this video, there were a placement of 216 blocks. It took a lot of work from women and men of the Mexican Navy and about 4 months to complete.
Pero el trabajo no termina ahí y ahora tenemos que cuidar que no se enreden las redes y retirarlas, estén o no estén en los ganchos, red que se encuentra en el mar, red que se retira.
But the work doesn't stop there. Any net that is found, whether tangled in the blocks or floating on the sea, the Navy will take care of it and takes care of it, pulls them out.
Para la Secretaría de Marina no hay malos tiempos. Ustedes pueden ver, el personal trabaja con viento, con marea. Cuando sí es muy peligroso, tratamos de resguardarnos. Pero si hay una red en el mar, acudimos, la retiramos y nos la llevamos.
As you can see, for the Mexican Navy, there is no rough weather. Only in very dire circumstances, we stop the effort and return, but we don't stop in pulling out these ghost nets or gill nets or both. We take them out.
A ese trabajo que inició la Secretaría de Marina solo, como vieron en el video anterior, se nos han sumado otras dependencias y por supuesto Sea Shepherd.
To this endeavor of pulling out nets from the upper Gulf of California, other Mexican agencies have joined the Mexican Navy and of course, Sea Shepherd.
Sin embargo, la Secretaría de Marina trabaja 24/7 y no dejamos de hacerlo aún en la noche.
Even at night, we don't stop these operations, as shown in the video.
De igual manera, hemos tenido la fortuna de poder regresar al mar a muchas especies, todo aquel pez o aquel producto pesquero que viene en las redes y está viva, la regresamos al mar.
And we
Esa es una totoaba.
not only pull out the nets, but we also are able to save species. In the video, you can see a live totuaba that was caught in this net, and the Mexican Navy released it to the sea.
Y bueno, este es el trabajo coordinado con Sea Shepherd. Ese es el trabajo diario. Cada red que se encuentra, cada red que detecta el Seahorse a través de sus equipos, la Secretaría de Marina acude y entre más manos existan, es mejor. No se retiran con equipo, con grúas, con ninguna otra cosa, precisamente para evitar cualquier riesgo a algún animal. Si viene vivo, se trata con cuidado y se regresa al mar.
As you can see in the video, there's the Sea Shepherd crew working side by side with the Mexican Navy. Whenever Sea Shepherd finds a ghost net or net entangled in the concrete blocks, Sea Shepherd calls the Mexican Navy, and in a team effort, they pull out these nets by hand to make sure that if there are any live animals entangled in those nets, they are released safely.
Eso también lo hacemos en la playa.
And we do the same on the beaches.
Después de eso, ¿qué hacemos? Toda red que se recoge está prohibida en esa área y se inhabilita. Se retiran los plomos, se retiran los flotadores y las líneas y quedan listas para su destrucción.
Gill nets are prohibited in the upper Gulf of California and in that area. So whenever they are pulled out of the sea, they are disabled, and we start a process of destruction of those nets.
Una vez que están listas las redes, lo que se le denomina el paño, es lo que en esta máquina que se alcanza a apreciar, lo quiero mencionar, es una donación que hizo Sea Shepherd precisamente para hacer la consecución y terminar realmente el trabajo. Si la red es un peligro, eliminemos el peligro, la destruimos.
So given that these nets are a danger, we destroy them. And the net grinder that you see there was a donation by Sea Shepherd. And the pulling it apart, those nets, is also a team effort with Sea Shepherd, because all of the components of the nets have to be separated and then destroy the plastic or any other, and the fabric that is part of those nets.
Ese es un trabajo diario. La inhabilitación de las redes es un trabajo que requiere mucho tiempo. Aún trabajando entre 15 o 20 personas diarias, lo más que se llega a inhabilitar son 100, 120 metros. Y hay redes que hemos recuperado de 500, 600, 800 metros.
So this is a very labor-intensive work. It takes about 15 people in a all-day journey to destroy 120 meters of these nets. and it's never enough. It's a daily effort because sometimes we retrieve nets that are like 500 or even 1,000
Este
meters.
este material que se destruye se entrega a su vez a Semarnat, quien le da un destino para reaprovecharlo.
The plastic that is destroyed is then given to the Ministry of the Environment, Semarnat, for their use in other for other purposes.
Además de todo esto, y como una medida de prevención, cada embarcación que sale al mar es inspeccionada y verificada que las artes de pesca que llevan realmente tengan un permiso que los ampare. Podemos ver 100, 200 embarcaciones en la mar, pero fueron inspeccionadas y estamos seguros que el arte de pesca que lleva está permitido. No ver una red quiere decir que está prohibida. Tiene un permiso, puede utilizarla, puede ir a pescar.
So the Mexican Navy also inspects fishers when they leave for the sea, and when they return, they check that they are using legal and appropriate fishing gear.
Y bueno, creo que esta imagen ya la describió perfectamente la doctora Bárbara Taylor. Esto es lo que al personal de la Secretaría de Marina le da vida.
And this video was shown before by Dr. Barbara Taylor, and for Semar, this is a cause of joy and a sign of hope and of life.
Este es el trabajo diario del personal de la Secretaría de Marina, hombres y mujeres que trabajan las 24 horas del día, los 7 días de la semana. Pero además, cuando los bloques fueron sembrados, hubo muchas dudas, hubo muchos miedos.
This is the daily work of the Mexican Navy. There were questions and doubts about the placement of the blocks, but they have shown good results.
Y el compromiso que adquirió la Secretaría de Marina fue el de revisar los bloques y los ganchos de manera periódica. Y este video que van a ver ustedes es un ejemplo de lo que se hace.
So,
Quizá no se sabe lo que se hace diariamente, pero este es un trabajo que se hace también diariamente.
so in the video, you will see Mexican Navy staff diving in order to check on the concrete blocks. Not a lot of people know that they not only placed the concrete blocks at the bottom of the sea, but they also review them on a regular basis. So this is a 5-minute video in which you will see the Mexican Navy divers going to check on the concrete blocks and the hooks.
Es importante señalar que el Alto Golfo de California es un área muy especial para los buzos, es un área muy riesgosa para los buzos a una profundidad mayor a 3 metros y a los 8 metros en ocasiones se pierde completamente la visibilidad.
You should be aware that the Upper Gulf of California is a very dangerous area for diving. In about 3 or 8 meters, visibility is close to 0, and the weather and the currents are dangerous. So this is a dangerous activity.
Ese es un gancho de un bloque
That is a hook of a block.
y además de hacer su trabajo, que vemos que ahí no se ha enredado ninguna red porque tiene vida.
You can see that in that particular hook, there is life and no nets entangle.
Ese es un bloque el que vamos a ver a continuación. También le está dando vida al mar.
Next, you will see the base, which is the concrete block, also covered in plankton.
Y es una de las preguntas que nos hemos hecho al interior de la Secretaría de Marina. Estamos combatiendo la pesca ilegal, estamos ayudando a la supervivencia de la vaquita marina, pero ¿cómo le vamos a dar vida al mar nuevamente?
A question that we make ourselves in the Mexican Navy is we are taking care of Vaquita, of Totoaba, pulling out nets, but what else do we have to do to give life to the oceans?
Y es una pregunta que el señor Pritam y la Secretaría de Marina nos estamos haciendo juntos. Y viene algún otro proyecto, algo que va a ayudar también, no solo a mantener el santuario, como lo determinó la doctora Bárbara Taylor, sino vamos a buscar darle vida al mar.
That is why that is a question that we have asked and shared with Pritam Singh, with Sea Shepherd, and also to determine what further actions are needed to give life to the seas of Mexico.
Quiero terminar mi intervención solamente agradeciendo a Sea Shepherd, que es un gran aliado, un gran amigo no solo de la Secretaría de Marina, sino del gobierno mexicano.
I would end my remarks by saying that we consider Sea Shepherd as a friend and as an ally, and not only of the Mexican Navy, but the whole Mexican government.
Señor embajador, sin su ayuda aquí en este lugar, quizá no avanzaríamos mucho.
Mr. Ambassador, without your help, we wouldn't be here and we wouldn't be making progress in this city and this country.
Y a nombre de todos y cada uno de los que integramos la Secretaría de Marina, mujeres y hombres que trabajamos diariamente, allá donde nadie nos ve, allá donde soplan muy fuerte los vientos y las corrientes nos mueven arriba de los barcos, reciban un saludo y un abrazo muy cordial de todos ellos.
So, on behalf of the men and women of the Mexican Navy that work very hard every day where they are not seen and where they are hit by currents and strong winds, please receive warm greetings from all of them to you.
Doctora Bárbara Taylor, hace 2 años platicamos de los bloques. Hoy puede usted ver que lo que nos comprometimos hace 2 años, que íbamos a cuidar los bloques, que íbamos a cuidar los ganchos, ahí está, lo estamos haciendo.
Dr. Barbara Taylor, we made a commitment to take care of the blocks, and that this is a proof that we are doing that, and it was a commitment to you as well.
Muchas gracias a todos.
Thank you very much. Thanks very much, Captain Carlos Ruiz, for an excellent presentation. This 2024 State of the Oceans briefing is brought to you by DJI, whose drones are mission critical in every single one of our Sea Shepherd campaigns. In addition to our work on the ocean, DJI drones help first responders with forest fire mitigation, search and rescue missions, and countless conservation and anti-poaching groups around the world. Please welcome DJI Director of Stakeholder Engagement, Wayne Barker.
Ambassador Moctezuma, Mr. Singh, Dr. Taylor, Captain Ruiz, honored guests. Buenos días y muchas gracias por venir hoy. Good morning and thank you all for coming today. I'm very humbled to be here today personally because of all the fine work that you see going on to protect our endangered wildlife. And at DJI, we're excited to be a part of this because we build drones that make the world better, whether it be giving a better view. Thank you. Whether it be giving us a better view in the sky, or as drones have proven, they're worth as an invaluable tool for public safety worldwide in life-saving incidents. And this is my background as a retired fire chief. 10 years ago, we started at my department utilizing drones to initially get an aerial view of an incident. And it grew from there to where we see today. They have become an extremely valuable life-saving tool for public safety, as well as those that they have sworn to protect. Areas from law enforcement, firefighting, search and rescue, emergency management, and even into the industrial health and safety world, as I'll briefly talk about, such as in this case, search and rescue, where we can see in this incident, a mountain search and rescue team is utilizing a drone to use a thermal imaging camera to find a trapped hiker. Then, once they've located the individual, they are able to utilize a spotlight to help guide rescuers in, as well as bring that person out. Something as a paramedic that's very near to my heart is utilizing a drone to deliver an automatic external defibrillator device, because the faster we can get electrical therapy to someone in sudden cardiac arrest, their chances of survival increase dramatically. In this instance, this picture, we see what had been an accident scene where police department were able to open the road back up and then utilize a drone to take pictures of that incident, not having to shut the road down or keep it shut, because what happens in the backup of an accident like this is every minute we have the road shut down, there's greater likelihood of a far worse accident occurring. Or as we see in this Breonna Taylor incident, where law enforcement was sending a SWAT team in. She presumably thought her house was being robbed and discharged a firearm. Law enforcement officers ended up fatally shooting and killing her. From that, law enforcement has worked hard to change these tactics to where now they're taking and flying in drones rather than sending a team in. And what I am excited to have seen over the last several years is more and more incidents where people are murder suspects, and others are peacefully surrendering to a drone rather than it ending in a tragedy. Fire response, initially my world was being able to just get a better overall view of the incident I had, but then thermal imaging changed that and made it dramatically more important. As you can see here, what I would see on the right is just smoke. On the left with a thermal imaging camera, I know the areas I need to contain. Drones aren't a cure-all, and they don't replace research operations, but they do enhance them. And the role of the drone really quickly is to capture that data through the drone itself, the sensors, whether it be, a high megapixel camera or a thermal imaging camera, or we use a flight planning software to capture that data. And then we can put it into processing software if need be, whether that be AI on board computing, as we've seen in some wildfire events for damage assessment, or analytic software in mapping and surveying. But what our goal here is to make an executive decision to enact on that information. And what we're doing with the drone is we're reducing that time that, as we've seen discussed, the wildlife may not have. And so the faster we can get and analyze that data and make those changes that need to be made is of critical value. So this is where I have been learning so much just myself today, and have been excited to see is how our drones are being implemented for research and conservation. Granted, my background has been public safety over several years. The last several years, though, I have been working more and more with wildlife conservation and researchers. And what I talked about earlier in public safety is active rescues, where we know we have taken that drone and utilized it directly to save a life. But what we see here is more of our passive life saving that can lead to direct methods. And this is anytime we send a robot into an environment that is dangerous for a researcher, or we're able to reduce that interaction and stress on the wildlife. We're able to get that data faster, as we talked about a minute ago, and we may not realize immediately we have broken a chain of events, an accident chain that may have led to injury or death of a human or animal. And as we've talked about, getting to areas that you couldn't access before, increasing the range of being able to locate wildlife, and again, passively look at their habitat, monitor them, measure them is extremely valuable. And again, reducing the risk or stress of injury to them, as we see in one of Sea Shepherd's videos here with a mother and calf. And again, this is where normally they would have had to get closer by boat to view this interaction between them. Instead, they're able to fly over with a drone, and the animals have no idea that they're there. And to give you just a sense of what we work towards at DJI is creating these sensors I've talked about. It might be a little difficult to see there, but the zooming in the center of the top left picture, there is a grain silo. But as those pictures progress, you see the ability to zoom in. So at greater range, wildlife conservation, law enforcement are able to observe poachers, observe wildlife, and again, not have that interaction that could be deadly. Here in this case, this is a group called Snotbot that started out flying through as the whale would broach and spray, they would fly through, collect samples, and get better data, they said, without interacting with the animal than they would before. Here, they're able to drop a tracker that uses a suction device without interacting with the animal, and again, reducing that stress. Getting more population counts, as we've seen, being able to assist in that. And then I'm going to leave you with this. This is just came up on Sea Shepherd's Instagram, but it gives a really good perspective of the work that they are doing and how they're able to utilize this technology to improve their work.
My name is Brendan. I'm a Grand Pilot working with Sea Shepherd for more years. Sea Shepherd serves the front lines of ocean conservation, defending the environment, especially in the United States. DJI definitely has some of the best cameras. Good quality and durability and flight durations have dramatically increased since I started 8 years ago. It was very important for us to stay in the air longer, as some marine animals go underwater for some time, and the drones can fly in very speed, exceeding 10 meters per second, which is great because flying at sea is always winning. And I enjoy the fact that we can enable discrete mode, which makes it easier to actually switch off all the lights on the drone, which make it basically stealth, so that the even fisherman cannot see the drone at night time, which makes it even better for me. The high definition imagery from afar, where I can sit safely on the boat and look at illegal fishing, and also with the very free thermal and the McLean steady thermal drone, where you can actually zoom in with the thermal camera and actually get the quality of that as well. And this allows us to save marine life and keep up our conservation that we are out here to do.
So let me just end here. For those that would like to reach out to me, here is my email address. And I want to say thank you so much to the Sea Shepherd organization, to the researchers and crews at Sea Shepherd, as well as the Mexican Navy for their work to do such wonderful work to preserve our wildlife. And thank you so much for everything you do.
Thank you, Wayne. Good morning, everyone. My name is Roger Fisk. I'm the Executive Director of Sea Shepherd Conservation Society. I just wanted to do a little bit of housekeeping because we have people joining us from about 15 countries and 25 states. So I want to say hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever that might apply to everyone watching from around the world. The work that you're hearing about is entirely donation driven, and we have a matching gift challenge going right now. And every dollar up to $150,000 is going to be matched. And to give you a sense of what that can mean, you heard Dr. Taylor and any number of my colleagues talk about pulling nets out of the upper Gulf of California, these silent killers that can drift around and continue to kill marine wildlife for months and sometimes even years. We right now are going to be tripling the net pulling capacity of our ship, the Seahorse, in the upper Gulf of California. And that is going to cost $150,000. So if we match our goal with the matching gift challenge, we can get that crane and we can triple our net pulling capacity and pull those deadly nets out of the ocean. We're going to pivot now and look forward a little bit. We're going to hear about a new campaign. And then we're also going to hear about a new ship. So Julian, whom you've already met, our Mexico country director, is going to come back up and talk about a campaign that's literally in its infancy. It's only days old, but we're really excited about it. And then our director of ship operations, Captain Octavio Carranza, is going to join us and walk you through the newest addition to our fleet, which is the Bob Barker. So first, let me bring Julian back up to the stage to talk about our brand new campaign off the Yucatan Peninsula. Julian.
Thanks very much, Roger. I'm going to share information about this brand new campaign in Bajos del Norte National Park. And Pritam, feel free to interrupt and add comments because we are very excited about this new campaign. So Bajos del Norte is a brand new national park established by executive action or decree in Mexico, Decreto, in January 8, 2024. It's located in the Gulf of Mexico off the Yucatan Peninsula. It's 240 kilometers from Progreso, Yucatan. And it is quite big. It's 1.3, that's an error. It's 1.3 thousand hectares. It is one of the main spawning areas for groupers in the Gulf of Mexico and has been identified also as a reproductive aggregation site. It's important to say that CONAMP is also very proud of this achievement. And they are also very proud that there is broad community support for this new natural protected area. So the community and fishers are involved and active in also protecting this area and obviously the future of the species they fish for. So CONAMP and invited Sea Shepherd Conservation Society to launch this campaign in June. Due to bad weather, we are now at the port of Progreso again, but we were able to be there for 2 weeks. We collected data. We were able to spot fishing. The mission was involved not only staff from CONAMP, but also CONAPESCA and obviously CEMAR. So the Mexican agencies were on our ship on the Bob Barker, as you see, our new ship. This campaign, for now, it was 2 weeks and it was quite successful. The area, as I said, is pretty large, but we were able to do some good monitoring and touring of the area. So there it says the first phase was completed just a couple of days ago. Key activities were reconnaissance tours to gather general data of the reefs. I should say that in that national park, there is the second largest reef in the Gulf of Mexico. It's called Alacranes or Scorpions Reef. And so the issues in that area are basically 2, illegal fishing and also destruction of the coral reef. So our work together with the Mexican government is to monitor that illegal fishing and also make sure that no vessels or boats are damaging the Scorpions Reef. And there's the list of agencies that are taking part in this mission that we wish to be a permanent one. And that's it for now. Pritam, would you like to add something about?
Yes, I would just like to say that we're very excited about this campaign. We think that this is an extraordinary place. If you go on Google Maps or Google Earth and you look at it and you just see this, here it is, this amazing reef all by itself. And we've just looked at the health of the reef. It seems to still be in pretty good health, which is, of course, a problem for reefs all over the world. And we're delighted that Mexico has taken the initiative to make this into a national park. And we're really happy and honored to be part of it. It's the ecosystem of the Gulf of Mexico is one big, huge ecosystem, and this reef plays a really important role. And it's really important to us. And I think, and those of us who have lived, have lived in Key West for many decades, and those of us who live in the Gulf, I think should be particularly pleased that the Mexican government has taken this effort. So we're very encouraged and supportive of this.
Well, thank you very much. Next.
Thank you, Pritam. Thank you, Julian. If we could bring Octavio now up, who's going to be joining us live from Mexico. I think one of the single words that sets Sea Shepherd apart from many other NGOs is ships. And I think it's always helpful for people to understand what we talk about when we talk about our ships. And so Octavio has been with us for quite a while. I believe he goes back to Operation Milagro 2. But he is our director of ship operations. He's largely in charge of, how we look at campaigns, match the needs of those campaigns up with specific boats, go out and find them, refit them, et cetera, for the missions that we need to send them on. So with that, Captain Carranza, thank you so much for joining us live from Mexico. And you're going to share a little bit about our new ship, the Bob Barker, with the guests. And the floor is yours.
Thank you, Roger. And thank you, Julian and Pritam. Yes, a little bit of a spoiler alert. You guys already saw our new vessel, the Bob Barker. But my name is Octavio, or Captain Carranza, and I'm the ship operations director. I'm very happy to be here, and I'm very happy to announce the fact that we have a new vessel. The new vessel is as mentioned, is called the Bob Barker. And I want to thank the Bob Barker Foundation and the family for its kind donation in helping us to do our job, which is ocean conservation. Chris or Marco, could you help me with the slide, please? Even though it was the original spoiler alert, you guys have already seen the ship, but it's the Bob Barker. Because I don't have a clicker, so if the AV department could just click on to the next presentation, please.
We are pulling up the presentation. 1 second.
Thank you very much, sir. All right, so here we have again a photo of the Bob Barker, and as we see here, it's the right OSV for 2024 and arguably 2025 and 2026 because it has everything that we need to do our operations. And next photo, please. So I will start to preface the next photo. The next photo is basically it's a DJI photo, Wayne, of actually the two ships that actually next slide, please. Sorry. This is actually it's a DJI photo of the two ships when we originally bought them. And this is in Louisiana. The first vessel being the Seahorse, which we've been using, as you guys know, and this has been illustrated by a number of people, including Captain Reese from Semar and Barbara Taylor. We have been using this vessel for over 1.5 years in the upper Gulf of California to extraordinary results. One of the things that we learned in the process of using these OSVs, an OSV is originally an offshore supply vessel, and they were originally designed to go off to the oil platforms and provide them with supplies. But what we have learned, and this is through trial and error, and you know, as campaigns evolve, we evolve as well. And one of the things that part of our evolution was to learn that the vessels that we had were not working correctly, and that's how we ended up with the OSVs. And one of the things that we have learned, because the Seahorse has been on Operation Milagro for almost 2 years. As a matter of fact, at the end of this month, it will complete its 13th. Its 10th month this year. So we are able to use these vessels for 10 months at a time, which is unprecedented for a vessel this size. We're able to do our job. We're able to stay on location. We're able to keep the poachers at bay, and we're able to essentially, you know, help in the case of the Seahorse. It's help the Vaquita. So that's been an important lesson for us because it allows us to do our job more efficiently by using technology. So what we have done is we have refit these vessels with technology and using a very simple structure. We're able to use the tanks that were originally used to go outfit the petroleum vessels, the fossil fuel vessels, or the platforms, and we use them for diesel to be able to stay out for long periods of time. This has proven quite effective for us because it keeps our vessels in the environment for like I said, up to 10 months at a time, which is a long time for a vessel. And the other thing that I like about these vessels, let's go to the next. Right here, you can see the other thing I like about these vessels is simplicity of these vessels. We have fitted these. This is the Bob Barker, and we have already fitted it with a 3-ton crane, which is 3 times the size of the crane that we have on the Seahorse. We would like to also refit the Seahorse with a similar crane, and that's for the extraction of nets with Semar. Semar has you know, we work together very, very closely with Semar. Hello to Captain Reese, and thank you for your presentation. It was good to see you. And as you can see here on the left side of the screen, we have Navy ribs, which are rigid bottom inflatable vessels that can be used for other operations as well. So we are fitting these boats for ocean conservation at the highest level. And that's something that we couldn't say a couple of years ago. So I think it's important to take into consideration that as an organization evolves, so do its ships. You know, and ocean conservation is something that because you know I've been out there, and once you get about 50 miles offshore, there's nothing out there. So it's very important to have these vessels out there. It's very important to grow our fleet even more in order to have the right tools to do our job. And part again of our job is to use technology. And thank you, Wayne from DGI. I'm very excited about this new collaboration that we have with Wayne. That original photo of the Seahorse and the Bob Barker, what we're taking with the DJI Mini Pro. I know it's a little guy, but it's still did the job. And so very excited about that, the possibility of using different drones as because again, as tools, because they can be, all that information can be integrated into our time zero system and our sonar. So let's go to another photograph of the next photograph of the Bob Barker, please. Okay, and this right here, this is the epitome of what the Bob Barker and the Seahorse are. They're very simple vessels. You know, they are vessels that, you know, that we can use, but one of the most important things, and the most important thing, is the technology that we use. On the Bob Barker, we will install a WASP sonar, which is able to take the telemetry of the ocean bottom. Julian was kind enough to go over the current campaign that the Bob Barker's on, that we did last minute. And for that, you know, we're doing some research on diving, and so, but in the case of the Bob, once it's completely refit, we will actually be able to map out the the ocean floor. We're going to be able to map out the bottom floor, and it's going to communicate with our time zero software system that integrates all that integrates with the cameras that we have on top, including hopefully some infrared cameras, and also using the DJI drones. So again, this is using technology for the advancement of ocean conservation, something that wasn't possible before. It was great to have offshore vessels, but if you don't have the technology to process this information, number one, our scientists don't know what's going on. As Barbara said in her presentation, she could see basically exactly where the boat was at every point in time during the, and this is not just during the Vaquita survey, but this is 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 10 months out of the year. The other 2 months, obviously, the boat needs some maintenance, and we send another ship to the location to make sure that we are covered there. So I think it's very important to have this technology. So scientists like Barbara and our scientists, we have 2 scientists on board at all times. Next slide, please. We have 2 scientists on board at all times, and look at this platform. This is actually looking aft or towards the back of the vessel. This is in Louisiana, and basically the scientists can basically have this huge platform that they have their own the processing computer station, and every single day they're able to report exactly what they see in collaboration with the different departments. The departments being the science department, the media department, the bridge department. And so it's very important that we have these, you know, our entire team, because ocean conservation is not just about vessels. It's about passion, and it's about people, and it's about the ability for everybody to do their job. So I think that that the Bob Barker is the perfect vessel for us at this specific point in time. Let's see, next slide, please. And this is the engine room. So again, this goes back to exactly what I said before. Simplicity. You know, we have 2 Caterpillar 3805s. I know too much information, but we have a simple engine room. We have 2 generators. We have a water maker that we put on for autonomy, so this vessel can stay out for long periods of time and make water. So scientists, whether it be collaborators or whether it be SEMAR on board our ships, or whether it be our own crew taking scientific information, we can use all this information in order to learn the ocean better, so we can protect it better, and number 2, have direct response with SEMAR. We're gonna eventually announce a new campaign with this ship. So with more ships means more campaigns, and with more campaigns means more ocean conservation. So I just want to thank you guys for your time and allowing me to give you a quick tour of our little big ship, our OSV, the Bob Barker. And thanks again to the Bob Barker Foundation for the donation. Again, nothing is possible without donations. Donations are the key reason why we have the money to do what we do, and that is to protect the ocean. So thank you very much, and I will pass the baton over to the next person.
Thank you, Captain. And thank you so much for sharing that. 2 little bits of housekeeping. We have over 65 members of our direct action crew streaming in from all around the world, and we want to give a special shout out to them. Our direct action crew is our monthly giving program, and it's an incredibly valuable and dependable source of revenue for us so that we can project on into next year and the year after that, with knowing that we have that strong base of support. And if you have not visited the Nana table over here, I really suggest that you do. This is one of our first corporate partnerships in Mexico, plant-based cosmetics. And they were kind enough to actually visit the Seahorse and bring samples to the crew out on our campaign. So Nana, thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate the partnership. We're going to look now across the Atlantic Ocean. We have 2 campaigns that we do in partnership with Sea Shepherd Global. One is the Stop the Grin campaign, which you'll hear about in a moment. But the other took place earlier this year and is something we'll be coming back to again and again in Antarctica, where Sea Shepherd Conservation Society staff joined with Sea Shepherd Global to defend and bring awareness to the depletion of the krill stock in Antarctica. And my colleague Nina Young, our Director of International Affairs, is going to give you a tiny bit of context and introduce a 6-minute video that came from the work that we did together in January and February. So Nina.
Good morning, everyone. As Roger said, this is a cooperative effort between Sea Shepherd Conservation Society and Sea Shepherd Global. What we're facing is in the Antarctic is a rapid warming of the Western Antarctic Peninsula over the past 50 years that has resulted in a decrease in seasonal sea ice and a nearshore concentration and reduction of krill populations. Around that Antarctic Peninsula are a key food source for fishes, seabirds, marine mammals. But because of the concentration of the krill distribution, the krill fishery now significantly overlaps those krill populations and the animals that rely on them for food. So what we're seeing now is that fishing in the Southern Ocean for krill, even at low levels, can affect the reproduction of humpback whales and penguins, and also that depend on krill for their livelihood and for literally their survival. So what Sea Shepherd Global and Sea Shepherd Conservation Society is doing is they're documenting this overlap of these feeding humpback whales and fin whales with this krill fishery in the Southern Ocean. They're documenting the impacts to these species, and they're providing this information to decision makers in the conventions that govern that area. It's time now for us, because we're seeing reductions in the reproductive fitness of these animals, and we're also seeing threats to their survival. It's time for the fishery management entities in that area to designate a marine protected area to essentially move that krill fishery out of this zone that's so key for the survival of these animals. But also, we need to make sure that there's enough krill for the animals. So we need to leave krill behind, which means there needs to be further reductions in the krill quota as well that are implemented through these bodies. So now I'll let you see firsthand the work that Sea Shepherd is doing to save this special habitat, but also the species and the krill that together make this vibrant area. Thanks.
Antarctica is a place of great beauty. It's home to a variety of species, many of which are not found anywhere else on Earth. Some creatures travel across the globe to and from those rich and fertile waters, and thus know the freezing temperatures are rare. Those waters are also home to the world's largest hunters. One thing on a healthy ocean to survive. Sea ice, perhaps in Antarctica's most iconic features, is disappearing. The size of the seas targeting species food sources of Antarctica. It's a 5 to 6 centimeter like creature. The system is huge. A single peninsula is the catching limit of 150 humpback whales per day. Taken from Antarctica from these products. Fish feed to fresh plants and provide around with a substance of the current intake of all mammals and seabirds in Antarctica. And the colossal population sends shockwaves through the entire food web. They also regulate climate change by storing equivalent of 5,000 cars worth of CO2 on the ocean floor every year. Crab populations have dropped since the 70s due to massive amounts of sea ice depletion, by which they in reduce. It's reflected in agencies. In 2017, 96% of performers were made. In 2020, that number plummeted to 21%. We face an enormous challenge due to climate change. Fishing makes no sense. That's about the Coronation Island. It's a relatively small island off the coast of Antarctica, but it's a really important feeding ground for whales and penguins. They come down here to feed on krill during the summer season.
look around us, we found 8 krill fishing vessels running through close of well. We're going tomorrow by a 9th vessel, making this a real hotspot for krill fishing, as well as it is a hotspot for whale fishing. The industrial scale operation that is krill fishing really does not have a place down here. This is the primary feeding grounds of whales and penguins. In 2023, Sea Shepherd came down to the region to expose the krill fishing fleets for the first time. The campaign was a huge success, and media coverage went global, exposing the krill fishing allowing directly to the waterfront. Our success last year gave us a decision to reject the increase of the contamination. This year, once again, we are with the krill fishing fleet, exploring them, trawling through the waterfronts, and supporting the case for permanently protected area fishing. Right now, we are launching a total media is splitting up closer to the vessel to expose the district to the languages.
Great. Go ahead. Great, that person slowly to the thank you. Okay, like go back.
Conservation of wildlife out here is amazing. It's a lot more than anything we've seen everywhere else. It's absolutely horrendous to see such destructive activity like being done here. There's 9 vessels around us to learn that catch as much wild in one day. This vessel is actually high. It's a private vessel. It is the first time it comes down here to the street. Those ships, the fleet, as they explain, catch was that we need to catch less wind, not at all.
This industry claims they're fishing sustainably, that they're doing everything they can to minimize their impact on the wildlife around here. Scientists paint a fairly different picture. They have found a correlation between the krill industry and the decreasing amount of humpback and female pregnancies. Every year, there's only a few months that the whales have time to feed on krill to get strong and healthy and to do their long migration routes. And they need to feed in an area with concentration of krill. And they can't do that anymore because of those ships.
We understand the things that when I take direction of the scientific community, I'm pushing for 70% of the wild oceans we detected. Scientific community proposes 3 large areas to recreate in Antarctica. We are one of them. Our implemented areas, like national parks on land, allow for the right of nature, protect precedent over 5 to 20 years of greater corporations.
No matter what label, no matter what sustainability promise is with the package, this krill is coming from down here, and in catching it, whales have been endangered, penguins have been endangered, the whole Antarctic ecosystem is being at risk because krill is the very foundation of all life down here. This summer, the governing body of Antarctica that is overseeing the krill fishery will meet up and decide if they will turn some of those areas here into marine protected areas. That is a big hope for us, for the whales and all wildlife. Sea Shepherd has long since made a promise to always protect Antarctica and its wildlife until the whales, the seals, the fish, the krill, the penguins have their home where they cannot be killed or mistreated. We will always fight for Antarctica.
Thank you very much. And our second campaign that we'd like to discuss is in the Faroe Islands, north of Scotland. It is called the Stop the Grin Coalition. Our campaign leader is here now, Valentina Krast. And Valentina, you have the floor. And Jay, she'll need the clicker too.
Let me tame the microphone while we wait for the clicker. How's the sound? Is it okay? Good. See if we can get our first slide. What a tremendous act to follow, that video. It's quite amazing. All right, can you guys back in the tech get me the first slide, please? This is the second one. Let's go back. There you are. So it's a great pleasure for me to speak to you today. It's an opportunity for us to expand our circles of allies and supporters of the work to end whaling in the Faroe Islands. Oh, there you go. Better? My name is Valentina, and 12 years ago, I joined Sea Shepherd as a Danish volunteer in Japan, opposing the killing of dolphins in a famous cove in a small town called Taiji. So I had to travel across the world before learning about the dolphin killings that were happening in my own country, my own Commonwealth. For obvious reasons, I then turned my attention to this cruelty, and I have since then been fortunate enough to dedicate myself completely to this cause in different ways over the last 10 years. Today, I lead the on-ground effort of our crew in the Faroe Islands, and I also represent Sea Shepherd in the coalition that I will speak more to you about in a little bit. For those of you unfamiliar with what the Grind is, it can be summarized as cultural and traditional whaling, killing of slaughter and dolphins and pilot whales in the Faroe Islands. So it can happen at any time of the year, as long as the conditions, weather and lighting are present for a drive hunt to be initiated. This means that the hunts usually happen between May and September every year. Around 1,000 dolphins and pilot whales get killed every year. This activity goes back centuries, but while it used to be an essential food source for the remote North Atlantic island community, today there is no need. The Faroe Islands is one of the richest communities in the world, well connected with the global community as an influential trading partner, fully modernized and privileged, making these hunts stand out as not only extremely violent and cruel, but also wasteful and disrespectful to nature. This has been Sea Shepherd's stand for years and continue to be today. Let's see, the clicker is a bit slow. Can you guys get me the next slide, please? So I want to start off this presentation by showing you two images to visualize the history and transformation that we as an organization have gone through since we first took on this issue in the early 80s. I think it's safe to say that Sea Shepherd, the time has not been standing still for Sea Shepherd in those years. The first image is from the early 90s, and these are volunteers based on ships. And the image next to it, to the right, are the crew today. While our commitment to the pilot whales and dolphins remain as strong and focused as ever, we have literally moved ourselves from being intruding strangers by boats, declaring our differences with aggression, to insisting on inserting ourselves into the community and creating the chance for change that we know is possible, not against the community, but with the community. The latter cannot be done with aggression or hostility. It requires a certain amount of respect, kindness, and an invitation to communicate with those who can actually drive the change, which is the local community. The guiding principle of our work today is to keep the international pressure meaningful, but also prioritize all opportunities for local networking. The balance of these two essential strategic efforts are absolutely key in progressing towards a local anti-whaling Faroese presence on the Faroe Islands. So while we have been extremely effective and successful in Sea Shepherd in creating this international awareness and outrage, we have not been as successful in finding Faroese voices who could speak for the pilot whales and dolphins themselves. They are there on the islands, and we're set on creating the right circumstances for them to take ownership and take part in ending this cruel practice. And you might wonder why Sea Shepherd has taken on this approach when we're known for aggressive non-violence direct action. But the reason is that whaling in the Faroe Islands is legal under Faroese law. And the legality is acknowledged by international bodies like the EU. The Faroese have not signed any conventions protecting whales and dolphins, and the Danish government does not have a say in the matter. And as long as that's the case, the decision to stop killing whales and dolphins lies with the Faroese themselves. And rather than keep on rejecting these facts, we have to accept them and work and adjust our work accordingly. Speaking of time passing, looking closer at the statistics of the last 43 years of whaling in the Faroe Islands, we see a slow decline in hunts being called and whales being slaughtered, but it's not very meaningful. While it's common to hear whalers complain about the lack of contributors to the drive hunts and the slaughters, it doesn't really translate into anything meaningful or a positive sign that whales are being spared. As we saw in 2021, when 1,428 white-sided dolphins were killed in just one day. With the modern equipment being used in the Grin today, it takes less participants to kill a far larger number of pilot whales than it did in the past. So it certainly takes out any traditional elements of this activity today, where now clearly it's a modern chase of defenseless animals without any fair chance of beating any odds. What this graph does not tell you is that there is a significant decline in the numbers of Faroese citizens that consume whale meat. This isn't unfortunately because they have compassion for animals, but it's due to the fact that the message of the whale meat being unfit for human consumption because of pollutants and other heavy metals in the meat and blubber has reached especially the females of the Faroese society. And because of this, females and children don't really consume it that much. A rough estimate today is about half the population consume whale meat on a regular basis. So while consumption has gone down, the killings have not. This clearly exposes the argument of Faroese whale hunting being based on sustenance to be false. And it also shows that while we have been engaged in this for decades, we don't see a decline. The highest number of whales killed at any given time during this period was in 2021. The highest number of hunts being called was in 2017. So with these facts in mind, we saw a need for a strategy change, and that started coming into place around 2020, where Sea Shepherd invited a newly formed Danish political party to the islands to take part in outreach and as many conversations with locals as they could. This sparked new friendships right away, making the decision to involve voices perceived much more local than those of foreign nations far away, sparked the potential for new conversation. And this was truly needed. So we now see a growth in Faroese individuals reaching out to talk about the Grind. It is slowly moving, understandably, because Sea Shepherd does have a hard image still on the Faroe Islands. But we continue to work on this, and I'm happy to say that it is going the right way. However, Scandinavian voices are not enough either. It needs to be Faroese voices to truly drive that potential for change. So in 2021, when we saw the largest mass slaughter of white-sided dolphins, it sparked massive international outrage. From that, Sea Shepherd formed a partnership with Shared Planet, a UK-based consultancy company with the goal of forming an international coalition of all of these different players with the purpose of motivating the Faroese government to come to the conclusion that it was time to set new policies for whaling. and to join the international community in protecting these animals rather than intentionally killing them. So how does the coalition look today? Today, the coalition includes national and EU politicians set on motivating the Faroese government to ending whaling through political and diplomatic pressure. And with the EU election just being held, we expect a number of political allies to grow in the upcoming weeks. The coalition includes other NGOs, sharing our work and knowledge and inviting them to take ownership of this cause. We have absolutely no interest in owning this cause on our own. We are focused on expanding the number of NGOs that will be joining the coalition in the future. The coalition also works with corporate pressure. We reach out to retailers and other stakeholders connected to the Faroese economy about the Grind, and we do advise them to take a stand against it. Being connected to the slaughter of pilot whales and dolphins is a stain on any modern company's image, and many are set on avoiding it. Our on-ground crew are also absolutely vital. They keep securing documentation and evidence of every single Grind, which secures the international press coverage that we need. It also secures the data and evidence needed for our policy work. And they continue to do local networking every chance they get with the goal of empowering local anti-whaling voices through friendship and support. So as this presentation is an introduction to our work in a very theoretical way, I brought a 90-second video with me today as a reminder of what it is that we're really talking about. And the brutality of it is why Sea Shepherd has been set on working against this for decades. The images are very brutal, and if you choose to look away to spare yourself the experience, you should do so. So I'm warning you in advance. But we do, however, need to have an honest conversation about what's going on. We need to have that conversation with policymakers in the Faroes, but also international policymakers. So showing the truth is actually quite necessary, and we're doing that today. I'll give you a chance to look away before I start the video. Damon, could you start the video, please? So yeah, that's the truth of it. This is what the crew document 5 months every year. We send them because if we're not there, these things will not come forward. They are hidden in small clips from whalers documenting their sports, but no one is looking at it critically and deciding to document and secure evidence for this work to be put forward to policymakers who will then put in the effort of ending this. The entire planet is working on how to protect protect our natural resources and the wild animals that we have left on this planet. For this to continue is madness. And while it is with respect, and we understand that the culture of the Faroese has this, it is part of their past, but it doesn't have to be part of their future. And that's the conversation we're set on having. So going forward, Sea Shepherd will continue to secure the documentation needed for the coalition to work through all possible channels to bring about that change. Balancing that international pressure via political and diplomatic channels also included cooperation and stakeholders connected to every part of the Faroese community and economy, and continuing to spread awareness in the global public as yourselves, while also taking every opportunity that we can to involve the local voices that do feel empathy for these animals and do feel it's time to retire is key. So it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. We've been doing it for 4 decades and will continue to do so. But this is the only way forward to motivate those in power to ending this brutality. And we invite everyone to contribute in any way they can, and we hope that you will. Thank you.
Well, that's pretty horrible. And let's just hope and pray that one of these days it stops. But we'll continue our efforts however we can contribute to that. I want to, now that we're coming to the end, I want to thank all of the captains and crews on all of our ships, first and foremost, because they're out there every day. And that's the work, the hard work, like up at the Grind, taking these photos, or every day out at sea to protect the vaquita, etc. And our campaign staff and our entire staff of Sea Shepherd, because it's not just the ships, there's so many people who make this possible. I want to thank Dr. Taylor. I want to thank Ambassador Moctezuma. Thank you. Everyone who came here from the Mexican Embassy, everyone from Samar, Wayne Baker with DJI Drones, and so many others on our staff. And I particularly want to thank Valentina for coming all the way here to do this presentation. And maybe number one, I want to thank all the Sea Shepherd supporters, wherever they are, for making this possible, because Sea Shepherd is unique and we have a 45-year history and we have an enormous ecosystem of people who support us. And, you know, I don't want to sound like public radio, where we constantly are asking for donations, but really that makes it possible. Valentina can do her work. People can do the work of Sea Shepherd. We can do the vaquita work, etc., because you actually help us. And thank you very much. We have, I think Roger just told me, over 15 people from 15 countries joining us today, and many states, over 25 states. So thanks for joining us. It gives me great pleasure here to introduce to you our closing speaker, which is former Secretary of State John Kerry and former climate czar. Reaching back to the very first Earth Day in 1970, John Kerry has made the environment a central pillar of his 5-decade public career, which has stretched from being a prosecutor in Massachusetts to chairing the U.S. Senate Foreign Relations Committee, serving as the country's Secretary of State for 10 years, and recently as President's Special Envoy for Climate Change. And most important of all, just being a really good, decent human being, which we need more of. So thank you. Please join me in welcoming John Kerry.
Thank you, Pradam Singh, for the chance to be with you today, and thanks to everyone at Sea Shepherd for a remarkable effort and an incredible partnership with Mexico. You're working not just to combat illegal activities that endanger the vaquita, but you're working on a whole new model of approaching ocean conservation enforcement through public-private capacity building and cooperation. And as I've said to many of you, I hope you took note of it, that when I departed the White House serving as Special Presidential Envoy for Climate, I may have left the job inside the building, but I wasn't retiring. I intended to pick up the work outside of government in the NGO and private sectors where so much work has yet to be done and where we actually, frankly, sometimes get a lot more done faster than we can waiting for the government to act. Literally, my first stop after I had resigned my position, and by the way, I'm deeply grateful to President Biden for his incredible commitment, way beyond what any president has yet done on the broad environmental challenge and the climate crisis. So I didn't leave for any reasons other than the fact that I thought the time had come after the last COP to be able to transition our efforts much more into the private sector. And literally, after departing, my first stop was in Athens at the Our Ocean Conference, which we had started a decade earlier when I was Secretary of State. And I was proud that Mexico was one of the very first countries to step up and engage then, just as you are engaging now. There is simply no bigger challenge than the work that we have to engage in to preserve and protect a world covered by more than 70% water. It is the place where our collective action is urgently needed in order to protect life itself, mindful of the fact that so many people take their protein out of the ocean, that the ocean is the place where 90% of the warming of the planet goes, and the ocean is, of course, the place where 51% of the oxygen that we breathe comes from. So our collective action is clearly needed more than ever to protect the ocean waters as the source of life for our planet. But it also means we have to honor the reality that you can't solve the problem of the ocean without solving the problem of the climate crisis. And you can't solve the problem of the climate crisis without understanding what's happening in the ocean and addressing those concerns. So the greenhouse gas pollution that comes from human beings deciding that's the way we're going to heat our homes, light our buildings, propel our vehicles by burning fossil fuel. The fact is that the greenhouse gas pollution that comes from that burning kills and destroys. It kills human beings, 7 million a year who die because of the bad quality of air, but it also kills, plant life, fauna, birds, sea critters, and has an enormously impactful consequence on the lives of people all around the world who depend on the ocean for their lives. Hand in hand with that work stream is the fact that we need an all hands on deck approach if we are going to be able to save the threatened waters and species, because we all know that money gets in the way, vested interests who want to continue the practices where they draw a big profit today get in the way. And also, unfortunately, government itself, which can move slowly at times, particularly trying to build consensus in order to move, is also an enormous challenge. So a decade ago, and 2,100 pledges, which have come through the Oceans Conference ago, pledges that are valued, by the way, at about $128 billion worth of either cash or in-kind efforts. So in Greece, there was an additional over 11.3 billion worth of new commitments that were made. I think we all have to be humble enough to realize that in a race against time itself, even our current ambition, as committed as every one of you are, even our current ambition is not yet enough to be able to meet the targets we've set of limiting the Earth's temperature increase at 1.5 degrees. So there is no time to rest when more than 60% of the coral reefs that host over 25% of marine life are threatened. 90% scheduled to be in danger by 2030 if we don't do a better job. There's also no time to rest when up to 1/3 of the seafood that we import is illegally harvested. And there's no time to rest when less than 3% of the world's oceans, despite all the marine protected areas, less than 3% are actually protected. And of course, there is no time to rest when the scientists tell us that our actions in this decade are what will shape our ability to be able to stop the collapse of the oceans and prevent the very worst of the global climate crisis. So today, I just want to focus quickly on the challenge that has shaped your partnership: illegal fishing, endangered species, and the work to make protection a reality. When I was Secretary of State, I had the privilege of working closely with colleagues in nations, including Mexico, in order to address the destructive nature of illegal, unreported, unregulated fishing across our ocean and our communities. And we all know that international efforts to stem the tide of IUU, despite all of our best intentions and all of the promises, is simply not enough. Global demand for fish is outpacing global caretaking of stocks and enforcement of the law. Put quite simply, there is just too much money chasing too few fish. And the global demand for that is outpacing the ability of law enforcement, and the combination of greenhouse gas emissions, the warming of the ocean, and the illegal fishing is creating increased global pressures on global fisheries. And altogether, that adds up to making a mockery of sustainability. Every country in the world needs to do more faster, not a developed or developing divide here, folks. And diplomatically, we have to do more regulatory, we have to do more with the support of communities and NGOs alike. We need to bring countries together in order to stem the tide. And I know that's what you all are working at doing. When I began the Our Oceans Conference, I was working with Leonardo DiCaprio and Sea Shepherd to save the vaquita. A lot of people were telling us, hey, you know, you guys are blowing in the wind here. This is you're just not going to be able to get this done. But guess what? The model that you're proving every day, particularly collaboration, capacity building, actually proves it can be done. It's a matter of willpower, not capacity. You are demonstrating already that governments and NGOs can create a model for collaborating on transnational challenges that puts vessels on the water in time to find the deadly illegal nets in protected zones and to confront illegality before it's too late. And also, particularly obviously, to not let people act with impunity, to be able to capture and enforce and make sure people understand there is a penalty to be paid for this breach of trust. I know that you are working today jointly, collaboratively, to put ships on the water every single day, and you're collaborating to make tangible, real, measurable on the water impact with generational goals with little room for error. And with the captain and crew of the new Bob Barker vessel, obviously we know there's room to grow. So looking ahead, I hope you're going to support the Republic of Korea in the 10th Our Ocean Conference and bring your model to the world. It can work. It can make all the difference. So Pritam and Roger Fisk and all of our friends from Mexico, I really congratulate you as you pick up the pace, as you push on, and as you fight to finish this race against time and tide in order to save species, in order to chart a path forward, in order to meet our responsibility, our common responsibility as citizens of the world. and as custodians of the ocean, which has no voice other than the voice that we give it. So I thank you profoundly for the efforts you're making, and I look forward to continuing to work with all of you. Thank you. Thank you, Pritam Singh, for the chance to be with you today, and thanks to everyone at Sea Shepherd for a remarkable effort and an incredible partnership.
I think, yeah,
with
thank you very
Mexico.
much.
You're
Everyone out
working
there,
not just to
first off, everyone
combat
here in the
illegal
room,
activities
on,
that endanger the vaquitas,
Ambassador Moctezuma,
but you're
everyone
working
from
on a
the
whole
Embassy
new
of
model
Mexico,
of approaching
all our friends
ocean
around the world,
conservation
the direct
enforcement.
action crew out there. We can only do this work with all of you. Please go to seashepherd.org. There's plenty of ways to help. Make a donation all the way on crewing on our ships. Half of our ships, or the half of the staffs on our ships, are volunteers. We bring people in from all over the world to help us do what we do every day. Thank you so much for joining us. Special thank you to DJI Drones for making today possible. Thank you all for coming down here. Thank you to everyone who was streaming our 2024 State of the Oceans briefing. We need each and every single one of you to get this all done, and there'll be more news soon, and we continue the work. Thank you.